In episode 12, config maps, secrets, and persistent volumes took hard-coded configuration and fragile storage out of the picture. This episode returns to a limitation from episode 11. Services are great, but they're clumsy at the one job a real application ultimately needs: serving the public internet properly. Recall the three service types. Cluster IP stays internal. Node port and load balancer can reach the outside world, but each one you create claims its own port or its own entire external load balancer. Run 10 small applications behind 10 load balancer services, and you've provisioned 10 separate external load balancers at 10 separate costs, with no shared layer for things like routing by URL path or handling TLS certificates in one place. Ingress solves that by sitting above your services as a single HTTP and HTTPS entry point, and routing incoming requests to different services based on the host name or the URL path, one external address in front of an entire application or many applications. Here's the part that surprises people coming straight from episode 11. Creating an Ingress object on its own does nothing. Kubernetes needs an Ingress controller, an actual piece of software running in your cluster, commonly Jinx, that reads Ingress objects and does the real work of routing traffic. Without a controller installed, an Ingress YAML file just sits there, inert. Once a controller is running, here's a real Ingress definition: rules matching a host, api.example.com, with a path, and pointing that path at a specific service and port, the exact services from episode 11, now addressable from outside by a real domain name instead of a raw IP. Add a second rule to that same file, a different path, pointing at a completely different service, and you've got two applications sharing one external entry point, routed purely by URL path. That's the cost and complexity when over-provisioning a separate load balancer for each one. Ingress also handles TLS in one place. Attach a certificate secret to the Ingress object, and every route behind it gets HTTPS, instead of configuring certificates per service. kubectl apply-f ingress.yaml creates the routing rule. kubectl get ingress shows the external address the controller has assigned. Curl that address with the right host header, and the request lands on exactly the service the rule specified, a real request routed by hostname, into a cluster. Let's recap. Ingress is a single HTTP and HTTPS entry point that routes to multiple services by hostname or path, but it does nothing without an Ingress controller actually running to enforce those rules. And it's where TLS gets handled once, centrally, instead of service by service. We now have traffic finding the right application from the open internet. In episode 14, we cover Helm, how to stop writing and rewriting all of these YAML files by hand, and package everything we've built as one reusable version unit. Subscribe so you don't miss it. See you then.